What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for TV. All right, man. Like I said in my first video today, the rhetoric has been ratcheted up on a million as we are now in the final days of the 2024 presidential campaign. This is by far the nastiest, ugliest, just most mean-spirited, negative campaign I've ever seen in my life. It's not about the issues. It's all about pointing the finger at the opposition and how much worse they are than the person who they want you to vote for, which is themselves. And not giving you a reason really to support their candidacy, only how the other side is just going to be worse. And I want to start off with this garbage-ass comedian. No pun intended there. What is his name? I think his name is was it Tony Redcliffe? Let me see. So Donald Trump had this Madison Square Garden rally this past Sunday, and many people tried to like it to this rally that was held in Madison Square Garden back in 1939. I don't know why people was making that parallel, because it's not like, in my opinion, that's a well-known fact that transcends time and history. Like, I wasn't even aware of that. Maybe it is common knowledge. Maybe those who grew up in the World War II era knew about what appeared to be treason. Americans actually championed Adolf Schicklgruber's Germany at the time. But whatever. So anyway, this trash comedian named Tony Hinchcliffe, that's his name, made a disgusting joke about Puerto Rico. He said something about, did you know that there is a float? Well, I don't even want to repeat it. We already know what the joke was. If you don't know what it is, you can look it up and find it yourself. He also made a lot of racist tropes about small hats, Palestinians, Black people, and Latinos. And look, I'm not a person that's easily offended. I grew up listening to Richard Pryor. I grew up listening to George Carlin, Bill Hicks, Sam Kinison. I love, roast. I mean, the uncensored, unfiltered stuff. I like the dirty stuff. So I'm not easily offended. But it has to be some sort of punchline to the joke. And it can't just be, like, to me, it just sounded like this dude was just going out there to just offend them, as many groups as possible. Horrible job of the Trump campaign vetting this guy. Well, I don't get it. Usually these things are pre-approved. They look at what the comedian is going to say. Like, for instance, the Al Smith dinner, which was held, 2 weeks ago, I guess? Week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. They knew what Jim Gaffigan was going to say for the most part. It wasn't raunchy. It wasn't really offensive. It was rather clever, some of the jokes he made, but it was within the boundaries of what you expect in a political roast of that caliber, right? That wasn't some backroom, club somewhere in, who gives a shit, Mississippi, It was a upper, that was what you would call it, the high class, latte sipping, old money / quasi nouveau riche Washington establishment environment. You're not going to say certain jokes there. Okay, this is a presidential campaign. Why was he allowed to say something like that? And then the only thing I can think of too is either he just went completely rogue and said what he wanted to say because he's an idiot and thinks he's going to get some fame out of this situation, or possibly he was a plant, because I don't understand it. Now, look, the thing I talked about earlier with Trump and the supposed maybe he had an affair with Tamara and all, I don't care. I don't think most Americans really care about that. And if you do care about it, you probably already have decided you're not going to vote for Trump anyway. And it'd be real hypocritical considering there's so many Democratic uh, candidates and Republican candidates who've had sex scandals. Look, Bob Menendez had to resign due to a severe ethics scandal, criminal scandal, actually. Media don't even talk about it. Don't even talk about it, ladies and gentlemen. Why? Because I said before, the media is full of crap. They're not fair and balanced. They put their activism or advocacy ahead of their reporting. And they don't even try to hide it anymore. Look, the media has always had a liberal bias, but for the most part, unless you're talking about some rogue investigative type reporters, for the most part, the establishment at least profess to be fair. They don't even hide it anymore. And I can't stand that. Because I consider myself an amateur journalist, and I try to be fair most of the time, unless I tell you I'm going to be unfair, like I will be LeBron Ramon James. But it's disgusting. Now, in my opinion, Trump, unless he's already done it, he should probably try to tame this down, because as close as Pennsylvania is, as close as Michigan is, Wisconsin, the Puerto Ricans that live there, and they could be different between victory and defeat. He should have some rally or event where he is surrounded by Puerto Ricans. I know it's staged, but the optics are important. He should have some event where he's surrounded by Puerto Ricans, have somebody who is of that descent that supports him, have them stand by him, and make an apology and distance yourself from this, because this could hurt you. An election this close, that could hurt him. Okay, that was a major snafu on the Trump campaign, by the Trump campaign. But what I don't like, though, is how many people in the media are making it seem like Trump said that, and he didn't. It was this idiot, stupid son of a bitch that said that, right? Now, although I get the fact that there's so many Trump surrogates saying dumb shit, it is what it is. I already talked about that, how so many people on that side, they can't help themselves. I'm not trying to tell people to try to vote, but me personally, it's those clowns that make me, I just can't do it. Now, if somebody want to vote for Trump, that's you. You know what I'm saying? You got every right to do so. And it don't make you this way or that way. I know one of them when I see one. People have their own personal reasons for voting where they want to vote, But on the other side, Joe Biden, let's see if I can find the exact quote. Let's see if I can find it, because they're trying to hide it. Essentially, what he said was the only garbage he sees are Trump supporters. Right? Joe Biden has always been a guy that has a lot of problems, even when he was in his prime. He has problems filtering himself, like when he gets upset. He tends to say what he's thinking. And I think as he's gotten older, he's lost his filter more, which I understand, because as I've gotten older, I've lost my filter. I don't give a damn what people think about me anymore. Maybe when I was younger, you kind of do a little, I kind of made, these people might, fuck people, man. Honestly, don't ever try to augment yourself to fit in with people, because they're not going to appreciate it. Actually, they're going to lose respect for you. They're going to see it as a pushover. This kind of reminds me a little bit of the mistake that Hillary Clinton made 8 years ago when she called Trump supporters, what did she call them? A basket of deplorables. And that's the thing, man. Look, there are elements on both sides that I can't stand. Okay. I just don't like when the Democrats try to be so sanctimonious and they have the moral high ground, and I just can't stand that because their history don't show that, and they have a history of saying a lot of inflammatory things that they get passes for. One time, Barack Obama talked about bitter small time America, clinging to their religion and guns and apathy. Remember one time Barack Obama supposedly said something about what was it? Was it Trump supporters or many GOP voters? Is they're like it's like being observing the Special Olympics. That never went anywhere, but he said it. You know, there's been a lot of things that have been said from the left that are rather inflammatory. Look, I want to say this about Joe Biden, though. I sometimes still suspect that while he is technically giving support to Kamala, you could clearly tell that it's not it's not really that's what I'm looking for. He's not doing it with full intentions. You know what I'm saying? When he's pushed to it, he feels obligated to be still the president of the United States, at least the figurehead of the Democratic Party, because he's been pushed aside. Kamala's now she's the vice president, but essentially she's the head of the party now, right? That has to burn him because he didn't want to step aside. The party forced him. The donors forced him to do this. And I wouldn't be surprised if he was, on some level, threatened. You know? And we always hear about the deep state, but I think that it's possible he was threatened. But if you notice, Jill Biden hasn't come out and campaigned at all for her. And the rumor is the Bidens, they hate her. They hate her guts. So what I'm getting at is, it's possible he could be saying that because he has maximum deniability here. Because it's in his nature to say things like this. Many people who are Kamala supporters and Democrats feel that about Trump supporters. So he's going to have his defenders saying, well, right on. That's how he feels. That's how I feel. Kamala had to come out and back that and walk that back because, you know, the last thing that Kamala Harris wants is Trump's base even more fired up than what they are already. But you could also argue that Biden said this because he knows it was going to fire up her Trump's base, and he kind of, in a way, wants her to lose. But he can't come out and say it, but he kind of wants her to lose. So maybe he is intentionally being an agent of chaos. Look, I want to mention this about parallels to history. Like Joe Biden, Lyndon Johnson bowed out in the 1968 race. 4 years earlier, Lyndon Johnson won one of the biggest landslides in American history. Won 44 states in the District of Columbia, won a record 61.1% of the popular vote, and swamped Barry Goldwater by some 16 million votes. By 1968, his approval rating was in the mid-30s. The country was in absolute anarchy. Riots were being broken up, or riots were occurring and being broken up by police who were acting like goddamn thugs, acting damn near like Adolf Schicklgruber thugs. And you had the Vietnam War raging. You had the the post-civil rights backlash occurring, where many white Americans felt like they were being neglected by the government. You had an undercurrent of youth culture rebelling against the establishment. both white and black. It was a terrible time. And Lyndon Johnson lost a lot of his support within the party. So he had to bow out of it. And then Hubert Humphrey emerged as the nominee. Again, nobody actually voted for him in the primaries, but the rules were different then. Not every state had primaries back then. That didn't start until 1972. So there were still enough party bosses, enough delegates that could be swayed from behind the scenes, willing and dealing, so that the majority of delegates already had been allocated to Humphrey because he did a lot of back room willing and dealing with party regulars. So it was this fact that a lot of people felt like Hubert Humphrey wasn't legitimate, that it should have been Bobby Kennedy or maybe Eugene McCarthy as a nominee. Plus, LBJ didn't like Humphrey too much because, I mean, he liked him personally, but he felt like Humphrey wasn't in step with his foreign policy, the Vietnam War. Humphrey was a dove, meaning that he was essentially for peace. And he didn't really support the Vietnam War. He was for at the very least the de-escalation of the war within a couple of years. Lyndon Johnson was not for rapid de-escalation of the Vietnam War. As a matter of fact, the candidate who was more locked in tune with Lyndon Johnson's foreign policy was Richard Nixon. And there's evidence to suggest now that, I know there's this belief that Nixon tried to interact or communicate with South Vietnam through back channels, that if you walk away from the negotiating table, because if you know your history, around this time in 1968, there was a bombing halt. And many people feel like that was done to swing the election to Humphrey. And then Nixon, fearing that a late surge from Humphrey would take away the presidency from him for a second time because he lost to Kennedy, that he basically committed treason. But now it's believed that while LBJ did stop the bombing halt for political purposes, there's actually not evidence to suggest Nixon did that. As a matter of fact, there's evidence to suggest that Johnson was helping Nixon, and that he did not want Humphrey to succeed him because he felt burned by the fact that in Salt Lake City in late September, Humphrey officially came out against his own administration's foreign policy. Not to mention the fact that LBJ never really felt embraced by the liberal wing of the Democratic Party. You know, the Eastern establishment always called him these derisive names. What was it, Uncle Corn Poon, or something like that? They looked at him as a backwards, cowboy, a redneck, a hillbilly. They made fun of him, his accent. He hated them. So a certain extent of him hated Hubert Humphrey and felt a kinship with Nixon because they both, quote unquote, came from poverty. If you look into it, you can see what I'm talking about. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is, I don't think Joe Biden really wants her to become president. I don't think so. He's doing as little as possible. Yeah, he's doing certain things, but I think that he feels burned and spurned right now, and it wouldn't bother him if she lost. And I think a part of him does want her to lose. And I think that's partially why he said what he said. Absolutely, because if you notice, Trump isn't going after Biden anymore. Remember, this is the same guy, Joe Biden, that put on a Trump hat and the event, what was it, 9/11 remembers event in Pennsylvania. He put on a Trump hat. So, it is what it is, man. This is one of the craziest elections I've ever seen in my life. But tell me what you guys think.